In a world where football reigns supreme, the quest for expansion never ends. Welcome to Crispy Maps. Join us on an exhilarating journey as we delve into the untapped landscapes, the thriving metropolises, and the untamed frontiers that could become the future homes of America's favorite sport. For decades, the NFL has captivated fans across the nation, uniting communities, and shaping American culture. But as the league continues to grow, the time has come to seek new horizons, new territories, and new fans to embrace the thrill of professional football. In this groundbreaking documentary, we embark on an exploration of the most compelling potential destinations for NFL expansion, from bustling cities with rich football traditions to emerging markets eager to establish their own gridiron legacies. We leave no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the next great chapter in the NFL's history. Join us as we immerse ourselves in the vibrant energy of passionate fan bases and witness the dedication, the spirit, and the unwavering love for the game that fuels the desire for an NFL franchise in these uncharted territories. From the sun-soaked shores of San Antonio to the iconic skyline of Portland, from the deep football roots of St. Louis to the bold ambitions of London, we'll explore the potential, the challenges, and the dreams that come with the prospect of NFL expansion. We'll go behind the scenes and hear from the decision makers, NFL executives, and city officials who are leading the charge in these expansion efforts. What does it take to build a successful franchise from the ground up? How do these cities plan to create a football legacy of their own? We'll find out. Buckle up and join us on this epic journey as we imagine the possibilities, the rivalries, and the excitement that lie ahead in the NFL's bold pursuit of expansion. Get ready to step into the future of football. Wow. That was a really nice intro ChatGPT wrote me. I could probably make entire videos like this, but I don't really want to, so you guys are safe here. Anyway, today we'll be looking at the most likely cities for NFL expansion. I know, so many others have done this already, but let me explain why I'm different. I'm going to use an equation to calculate the best cities for the NFL to expand towards in America, as well as potential areas outside of America. With this equation, I can calculate the best cities for the NFL to expand to. So let's get cracking. Some of the answers might just surprise you. Alright, so let's get started with how this equation is going to go. Alright, this is the NFL expansion equation that I have. This is the equation that all the cities are going to go through. And this is also the very first unscripted part of this video, so let's see how this goes. First is the MSA population. Basically, the amount of people in the metro area divided by a million is the MSA score. Simple enough, right? I think so. Second part is probably the most complicated part of this equation, which is the state score. Essentially, you get the state population divided by the state constant multiplied by 1 million. Here is the state constant. It could either be 1, 1.5, 2, 4, 7. I know I don't have 1 on here, but 1 should be pretty self-explanatory looking at the others. 1 is if that city is going to be the only city in that state with an NFL team. 1.5 is if there's kind of another team in that state, but like not really. These are really only applying to Missouri and Virginia. I'm really looking at Missouri here because looking at St. Louis, do I calculate the city as being in Missouri or do I count that as being in Kansas? You know, obviously the stadium itself is in Missouri, but at the same time it may be more representative of Kansas. That's really why I have that on there. Same thing with Washington, D.C. It's not in Virginia, but it's very representative of Virginia. It's 2 if there's another team there, and if that team were to exist, there would be 2 teams in that state. 4 if there's 2 other teams, and the team would be the 3rd team in that state. 7 if there's 3 other teams, and that team would be the 4th in that state. This basically prevents all the top cities on this list from being in California. Part 3, do other major teams exist in that city? Basically just NBA, MLB, NHL teams. If there are, it's 1 point for every other one of those teams. Simple enough, right? Good. Part 4, NFL history. Yes, plus 2 points. So if this city has had an NFL team before in recent history, I'm not really going to count it if, this one random town in Ohio had one in 1910. But if it's recent history, basically like Oakland or St. Louis, I'm adding it on here. Part 5. Is it overshadowed by other states on this list? What I mean by this is if all the cities above that city on the list became NFL teams, would any of those other states be in that same state? So for example, I have Hampton Roads and Richmond. Hampton Roads is above Richmond. So if Hampton Roads got a team, Richmond probably wouldn't get one too. So I would not consider Richmond in the final rankings. It's still on this list, it's just not considered in the final rankings. Simple enough, right? A couple of other major things too. I'm not considering metro areas that are like right next to other major metro areas. What I mean by this is really like, for example, San Jose. San Francisco's stadium is actually closer to San Jose than San Francisco, so I'm not counting San Jose. And also Riverside. Most people don't even know about Riverside. It's basically just more suburbs of LA. I'm not counting Riverside, although they are their own metro area. And there's a couple of them I'm combining too. If there's two that are like right next to each other, for example, San Antonio and Austin will be the main one. Alright. Now, those are all the rules with this equation. That's how I calculated it. Let's look at the actual results. So here are my results. On the left, I got all the metro areas that I'm going to be discussing as potential candidates for NFL expansion. All these have a realistic shot of getting it. I only took the top 60 metro areas. The only exception from this is Oakland, which isn't really its own metro area, but is part of San Francisco's. I added it because obviously they just have an NFL team. And the NFL likes to kind of like take teams away, then give one back. Like they did with Cleveland or Baltimore. So obviously the top of this list I have St. Louis, then Orlando, San Antonio, Portland, so on and so forth. There are some surprises on here. It's like the actual like best statistically cities to have an NFL team. I obviously combined San Antonio, Austin. I combined Hartford and Bridgeport. And I did combine Omaha and Lincoln. And again, although some of these cities may not seem that large, they are in the top 60 largest metro areas. So you may be surprised to see Grand Rapids on there or Greenville. But at the same time, they do have relatively large metro areas. So obviously, these top metro areas have these top MSA scores, or Metro Statistical Area scores. And then I looked at the state. This is all these state constants for each of these cities. I'll give you a second to just look at them. And then I obviously have their state population. So what I was talking about earlier is like California. There's 3 teams already in California, so the state constant is 7. But also, California has a population of 39.2 million. That still gave Sacramento a state score of 5.6. Compared to Portland, which it would be the only city in their state with an NFL team, a state score of 4.2. So I tried to make that as kind of like equal as possible in a way. But at the same time, some states do end up overriding that. And then obviously number of pro teams there. So St. Louis has 2, Orlando has 1, so on and so forth. And to be honest, not everything on here is super right. I narrowed it down a tiny bit. I only like rounded to like 2 digits, 1 or 2 digits before. And then I had a few ties, so I rounded to like 3 or 4 as a tiebreaker. So that's why some of these have like different totals. But let's go to our actual list. And obviously, I do have a few cities that are overshadowed before I do finally go to that final list, which is honestly right here if you really want to look at it. But I'll go over that in a second. So, the top city on here that's overshadowed is Richmond. But also, going back to overshadowed cities, I do have 2 more, which is Tulsa and Fresno. Again, if there was going to be a city in Oklahoma that had an NFL team, it would be Oklahoma City, not Tulsa. Although I do think Tulsa would be an interesting area if he wants to choose that instead of Oklahoma City. But Oklahoma City would probably be the better bet. Same thing with Fresno. Same thing with Richmond. Now let's get to the top cities on this. So I had a few different final rankings. There's a modified thing which I'll go over in a second, but let's go over the initial modified rankings. Or not modified rankings, but the initial rankings so far. So the top one by a long shot is San Antonio and Austin. I do have Oakland on here, and that scored pretty high, as they have other teams. They're in California, and they also, just had an NFL team. So they did score pretty highly in those three other areas, despite not really having that large area in the two counties that I consider as Oakland-specific metro area. So they scored second overall. Third is St. Louis. So far, no surprises. Fourth is Sacramento, which might surprise a few, but Sacramento is pretty large. Fifth one is probably where the first major surprise comes in, and that's Raleigh. Carolina is a pretty large state. I was about to say California there. Why did I do that? I have no idea. But North Carolina has a pretty large area. So again, if you really want to look at that, good. And you divide 10 by 2, you get 5. So second team in the state population of 10 million is still 5 million for their state score. You'll see that come up a little bit later too. Hampton Roads, again, Virginia doesn't really have another team. I guess you can count DC if you want to, so I did make that state constant 1.5. But Hampton Roads is a relatively large metro area in Virginia that doesn't really have an NFL team, which makes that pretty large. Orlando is on there. Portland is a little lower than you might expect. There's not that many people in Oregon. Next is Oklahoma City. And then the major surprise, cracking the top 10 here, is Greenville, South Carolina. Now there's no other teams in South Carolina, although again, I guess you consider Charlotte as kind of being a part of both Carolinas, but not really. I don't consider it at all. I didn't even give it the state constant of 1.5. So South Carolina does not have an NFL team. Greenville is a relatively large metro area, so it's pretty high on here. A major surprise is Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is not really a city you would hear on all the other videos saying, hey, let's move an NFL team here. But again, Michigan has a population of 10 million. Divide that in half, you get 5 million. So a second team in Michigan could really support really well. And you can even look at Michigan State, obviously they're both national brands of college football. But at the same time, most of their fan bases still come from Michigan, and both are thriving college brands. I mean, I guess that's one way to look at it. Next is Columbus. Next is Birmingham, not really that high. Memphis, then Louisville, then Hartford, Salt Lake City, Tucson, Rochester, Omaha, Honolulu. Honolulu, not a good spot to put a sports team. Now, Omaha, probably a lot lower than I thought. Same thing as Memphis. So I did add a modified area. This modified area, I decided to add a couple of other states to their state population. Because again, Omaha wouldn't just be representative of Nebraska. They'd probably be pretty representative of South Dakota and Iowa, and pretty much the entirety of the Great Plains. So I added the state populations of Iowa and South Carolina to their state score, and that moved them up quite a bit. Then Memphis, again, I figured they'd probably be pretty representative of Mississippi and Arkansas. So I think I had half of Mississippi's population. So every half would be from New Orleans, half would be from Memphis, and then the entirety of Arkansas population on there. And finally, I have the final NFL teams in order. Starting off with San Antonio, then Oakland, then St. Louis, then Memphis, then Sacramento, Raleigh, Norfolk, Omaha, Orlando, Portland, Oklahoma City, Palmetto, Grand Rapids, Columbus, Birmingham, Louisville, Hartford, Salt Lake City, Tucson, Rochester, Honolulu, and that's it. I did add mascots because I figured that'd be pretty cool. if you like them, go ahead and subscribe, because I really like that. And chances are you're probably not even still on this part anyway. But if you are, thank you. It's almost over, trust me. So, I did have some teams move around. I did rename Greenville to Palmetto State Palms, which I thought was a lot better. And now let's go over some international cities that would be pretty neat. So I have Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary in case they wanted to move to Canada. Realistically, they would just do Toronto if they wanted to move to Canada, like all the other major pro sports leagues do. And then I added a Pacific Division, which is 4 most likely cities I think they would go to if they ever wanted to go over the Pacific, which they probably wouldn't. I mean, Mexico City is probably a legitimate contender, and the rest are like far cries. The European Division, they like to talk about that. I don't really see a legitimate chance of them actually having a European team anytime soon, because that's just way too far of a flight. That wouldn't really add up, and that's again just a lot of miles to get that team to and from the United States. And they would really try to have to like manage it so that they have several home games in a row instead of like ping-ponging across the entire country. No, or not the entire country, but the entire Atlantic Ocean. So I do have that, and so I decided to create a European division. So London, Paris, Munich, Madrid. I figured that's about right, and really moved on. Alright, and that's going to conclude this video. Thank you for watching. I decided to do something a little different, so hopefully that works out. Stay crispy.